accommodating Dr. Eads and his staff and making this facility available to us. We've got a busy morning and early afternoon for you, so I'm not going to take much time making some announcements, but there are some very pertinent ones you need to be aware of. First of all, the restrooms are out here and to your left. They're rather small, so don't go as a group. So just take your time and kind of plan for that, if you would, please. Lunch will be at 11:30 out here in the hallway, and then you bring your lunch back in here to eat at the table. And there is an evaluation form in your packet, so at the end of the session, if you would please complete that and turn it in at the desk. We'll leave it on your table, whichever is best, and we'll take care of it from there. And then also in your packet is a form for PGP, for those of you who are interested in those. So, with that, I'm not going to take up any more time. I'd like to introduce Mr. Tom Hunter, the superintendent of Greensburg Schools, and he will introduce his staff and present his presentation.
Thank you. We are going to be kind of formally informal today, meaning that we do have some stuff, some PowerPoint information we're going to provide for you, but at the same time we want to be able to answer any questions that you might have. So we're going to have at the end of our presentation this afternoon more formal time for questions, but if there's something comes up as we're presenting and you want to answer right away, just raise your hand and we'll be glad to answer any questions. With me today, I have Tammy Williams. She's our Director of Curriculum and Instruction for Greensburg Schools. Dave Strauss, who is the principal at our junior high school. And we have Sarah Wheeler, who is a teacher at our junior high school. So what I wanted to do today is kind of give you a perspective on the RISE, where it is at the central office level, then let you talk to a person who's really in charge out there at the building level, working with teachers and administrators on getting the process going at the building level, and then a building principal who can tell you, the positives and negatives of the whole process at the building level, and then a teacher who can tell you about what it's like going through the process as a teacher. So we're going to try to give you all the perspectives that we think will help you. We were one of the pilots, and we have adopted RISE as is this year for our evaluation, both the teacher, the principal, and the superintendent. So we're kind of tied into it. I think as a superintendent, I would tell you that one of the things that we've seen this year is maybe the second year is tougher than the first year, because now you know what you didn't know, and there's some really good things about that, and I think we're experiencing some of that. One of the things that probably I've gotten some criticism about over the last year is I'm very, very positive about this process. So if we're slanted anywhere, it's probably going to be towards a positive. And I think our administrators are very positive about the process, because we are all about helping kids do better and be successful. And I think this process brings a lot of things to the table for the classroom teacher and for the administrator that we didn't look at prior to this instrument being our means of evaluation for each one of the kids in the building, getting to know the kids and getting to know them more than by just name. But I think the really positive thing about it is what you have to do at the building level as a classroom teacher and getting to know the history of your kids and what their ability levels are in many different areas. So I think you'll find that we're going to present a pretty positive view today. There are some negatives with it, without a doubt. There's negatives, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work setting it all up, and it's a lot of work every day in the classroom as a teacher, and definitely as a building administrator. And our central office job, just like at the building level, has changed dramatically over the last year. From the superintendent's perspective, the first thing that I would tell you is you've got to have somebody in your district that's the go-to person on it. Probably not going to be the superintendent. I'm not the go-to person. I've been involved with the process from the beginning. I think I'm pretty knowledgeable about the process. But Tammy Williams, our Director of Curriculum Instruction, she is the go-to person. And she's the person who works with the building level administrators if they have concerns, and with individual teachers. So the one thing that I think you have to do right up front is get somebody in your corporation who is the go-to. The second thing that you have to do is you've got to build into your days at your building levels collaboration time for your teachers. Whether that's during your school day, before school, after school, but you've got to be able to get your teachers together at some period of time during the school days, weekly, monthly, however you're going to do it, but they've got to be able to get together to work as a group for this, I think, for this process to be successful. And as we go through the day, you will see that. As a superintendent, the first thing that we began when we began the process is I wanted to be very clear to all of our staff why we were doing RISE. And I think that's, you know, we're into the school year. I did this on the first day of school. And my back to school speech was on why we're using RISE. And I think communicating that to everyone very clearly helped everybody kind of establish goals at the building level and even at the classroom level. You know, we said that, you know, the reasons why we were using RISE is to recognize great teaching, provide clear and defined expectations for all of our teachers. And I think that's one of the keys is, you know, in the past, maybe if you're the PE teacher or you're the music teacher or you're the art teacher or you're maybe working as an interventionist or whatever in the building, you kind of got a free ride maybe compared to a teacher that was teaching math or language arts where you had all those test results. There are no free rides anymore. Everybody's held accountable for what they're doing on a daily basis. And one of the things that we established at Greensburg Schools a few years ago was we developed a new motto for our school, and that was that we were all about learning. And we defined that to be all about learning, we have to have a focus K through 12 on literacy. And we're in the process, I can't say we're there, but we're in the process of holding everybody accountable for that literacy focus that we have. And I think, you know, defining that you know, we have expectations for every one of our teachers very clearly and what those are going to be. That was one of the keys to helping us get this process off successfully. Also, you know, it really helps in I think for most teachers, in them seeing that the process is fair and that the expectations they know right up front. And you'll define those. I think those, a lot of times those will be different maybe in Greensburg than what they are in Newcastle or in Greenwood or in Southeast Du Bois. You know, there are different things that go into those expectations at the community level. But I think it gives you the opportunity to define those very clearly for your teaching staff. Also, you know, it kind of changed a few things that we were doing at the corporation level. You know, we have to clearly show that we're focusing all of our resources, which for Greensburg is like everywhere else, they're a lot less than what they used to be, but we're really focusing those resources on student learning. When we make a decision on how we're going to spend money, the first conversation we have is, how's that going to impact student learning? And quite honestly, I didn't really focus on that before. You know, that happened, but it happened maybe sometimes by accident. Now, there's no accident to it. Every dollar we spend, we want to make sure that it's going to have a positive impact on student learning. And, you know, we found that that's not been as difficult a process as we thought it would be. Because one of the things that we do, and I think this is imperative also to the process, is all of our administrators meet every Wednesday from 4 o'clock to 5:30. We did that all last year, we're doing it all this year, and we have a session that sometimes we have a direct agenda on what we're going to talk about. Sometimes we've done a book study on an area of leadership that we want to focus on, but we always network on what's going on in the building, how can we do what we're doing better, and how's it going to impact student learning. You know, I think that's one of the keys. Like most superintendents, we had a monthly administrative meeting, and we talked about administrative things, and that's about all we got together, unless I had something on my agenda where I wanted the principals to all come in. Now it's weekly, and it's an hour and a half, and it's one of those things that I think they could share with you some awful positive things have come about from that. And again, we've asked our teachers to do a lot more than they've ever done before. So one of the things that I want to make sure that our teachers understand is the paradigm that we're working in now as administrators, it's changed too. We're definitely not just managers making sure that the discipline's in the building and the schedule's running right, kids are getting on the right buses and all those types of things. We still got to do that. But their focus really is a lot more on the educational process than it is just as being managers of the building. We also want to make sure that all those resources are focused on instruction. And our PD that we have at the building level now, you know, it has an instructional focus, especially for those teachers that may be struggling. And we'll get into that more as we go through the program. Two of the things that are very, very obvious in our system now is the focus that we have on all of our students being engaged. And you know, we have block scheduling at our high school where we have a 90-minute block, an 8-block schedule, all the way down to our middle school, junior high, where we have you know, 45-minute classes, and they have 10 different classes. So the arrangement we have is quite different, but our expectation now is no matter what the length of time a child is in your classroom, that they're engaged the entire time. And I think as superintendent, that's the one thing that I've seen the biggest change in our system. Last year, I visited all the classrooms in our system for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, depending on what the teacher was doing. It's amazing what you can see in a 15-minute session. I think especially as a superintendent, because I always did go out to our buildings. We only have 3 buildings, so it's a little bit easier. We're about 2,200 students, so it's a little bit easier to get out to the buildings, but I didn't always go into every classroom. And I was amazed last year about some of the things I saw in the classrooms. And it wasn't an observation, it didn't go back to the teacher. It wasn't punitive to where I went in and talked to the superintendent about good, bad, or ugly things I saw. We did have conversations about some of the things that I saw, and it was more about really the positive things that I saw and how we need to be sharing those around the system. You know, we're like probably a lot of school districts. We bring in the expert for the hour, and then they leave, and everybody forgets about them a week later. And the sad thing about that is we've got so many really, really talented people in our system, like Sarah Wheeler here, one of our teachers. You know, very talented teachers that can help us a lot right here at every one of our buildings. And one of the things that we want to make sure is that we're using them, and that one of the focuses is that instruction's taking place all the time, every day. And I'm sad to say, you know, that wasn't always the case in the past. One of the greatest criticisms I had if I went to a building was if I walked in a hallway and I saw a classroom sitting there and nothing was going on. And, you know, I think if we're all honest, we can say that happens in every school, everywhere at some point. Our goal is for that never to happen. And I think our principals, Dave can share with you, we have some ways to make sure that doesn't happen. The other thing is you will become very, very data-driven. And I know everybody says they want to become data-driven. This process will make you become data-driven. Decisions are going to be based on that data rather than I think, or we've done it this way, or you know, whatever. It's going to be based on the data. And it's going to be based on the data of your kids. And what's it going to take to get your kids from one level to the next level. And again, their conversation is going to focus a lot on that. You know, we are like everybody else. We're in the process of seeing how we're going to put, you know, the core curriculum in place in all of our different subject areas over the next few years. One of the things that we are demanding this year from all of our teachers is that if you're a secondary teacher, junior high and high school, that you have a syllabi for your course online. You have your curriculum map up online. You have your short cycle assessments up online. And that everybody has their own web page. We also do Parent Connect, and you have to keep all of your grades updated every week online. So those 5 things you know, we've had it in place for a few years, and it was kind of hit and miss with some of it, but this year it's an absolute by September the 15th, which just happens to be tomorrow, I think. All of those things are due for all of our teachers. And the principals have a checklist with every single teacher that they have, and they have to check those off. But that helps us with this process of making sure that all of our teachers are on the same page, and that we have the expectation for every teacher. That it's not just the English teacher or the third grade teacher that has to have a web page. You know, the high school physical education teacher or the elementary music teacher, the same expectation for them. So this has been very important for us, and I think it's really helped us change the culture within our system. And we've really used this process to our advantage, and I think teachers, they understand a lot more about why we're doing things than we've ever done before. We'll get to it as we go through the process. You know, two of the things that I said that absolutely have to happen is there's got to be an awful lot of communication, and there's got to be a lot of collaboration. One of our core values was always shared leadership. This is really bringing that to the forefront. And I think you'll find that'll be the case in all of your buildings. The accountability, it's definitely one of the things that's at the forefront of the whole process. Not just teacher accountability, but principal accountability, central office accountability, and superintendent's accountability. One of the things when we surveyed ourselves after the last year, one of the things that came across in the survey that we were very, very proud of was the fact that all of our teachers, 100% of them, said that we communicated the process to them very effectively. And that communication came from the continual meetings and collaboration that we had with them. A lot of that, I give total credit to that. Tammy, for our building administrators, and for our teachers who were very interested in the process and were actively participating in the process. This is probably one of the most important things that you have to really work hard to establish is a timeline to get all this done. The toughest thing from the outside looking in is, okay, if I'm a building administrator, there's only a limited number of us in the building, no matter who you're going to have doing the observations, whether it's a primary or secondary person doing the observations. There's so many observations I have to do in that building for my staff. In Greensburg, our principals and assistant principals are the only ones who we use to do the observations. So our principals and assistants, our special ed director did our special ed teachers. And then the principals and the assistant principals did the teachers at the building levels. They had anywhere from 15 to 27 teachers that they had to do the observations for. The only way you're going to make sure that you do that is if you have a schedule to begin with, and the only thing that interrupts that schedule is an absolute emergency. You're going to have to really, as a building level administrator, and how many people in here are administrators? Okay, the majority. If you're a building level administrator, you know, we all went to the classes, even back guys as old as me, we went to the classes where you're gonna need to be the educational leader in your building. You can't be a manager. You got to be the educational leader. This process is going to make you the educational leader in your building. It's amazing how you're going to find different ways to manage a lot of the tasks that you did before. You're not going to be standing in the cafeteria for an hour and a half watching lunch time duties. You may not be out every afternoon or every morning at the bus stop when kids get on and off the buses. That doesn't mean nobody's going to be there. It's going to mean you're going to have to rearrange how some of the things in your building happen. Our principals will tell you, our community was very, very used to just walking into our building saying, I want to see Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, and they were ready, they were used to just right away talking to the principal or the assistant principal or even the superintendent. That doesn't necessarily happen that way anymore. Because if they're in an observation, they don't leave that observation to come and talk to the parent. We just ask the parent to please set up an appointment later in the day or whatever free time. They'll come back and they'll have that conversation. Now there are emergency situations where they do come out of the observation, but that'll change your day a lot. And you can easily, we really didn't get started on the observations until about November of last year, because we had a difficult time figuring out how we were going to do these observations. How many of you have an instrument that you're going to be using to do the observations, an electronic instrument? Okay. A lot of them out there, we use the Own It, Kelly Hipskin's instrument that he designed. His dad's actually our dean of students, so he kind of designed it with help from us and what we needed. There's plenty of other instruments out there, and we're not endorsing one over the other. But the biggest thing our administrators found at the beginning of the year, which we wasted really a lot of time on, was trying to figure out how we were going to do this, because we tried to use the observation process that was in the manual. Totally just overwhelming. You couldn't do it. All of my administrators, I think, were ready to quit. After a month, they were ready to quit because you just couldn't. They were spending 2 hours doing an observation. By the time they did the observation and they wrote it up, they were spending 2 hours on it. We streamlined that to where they can probably do it now 30 minutes, 45 minutes at the most per observation. So once you get that process down, really the observations become very manageable. Whether you have 15 or whether you have 37 teachers that you're looking at. On probably most buildings, you're not going to have over 37 for one administrator. Does anybody have more than that for one administrator? Okay, to ease your worries a little bit, from November to April, all of our principals got all of their observations done and had no problem doing that. So you may think that you can't get that done. That's not probably the biggest part of the process. Dave's going to talk to you about that from a principal's perspective. But this timeline is very, very important in setting up for yourself on how you're going to do that. This isn't necessarily the timeline that you're going to give to your secretary. But what you need to do is sit down with your secretary, put the dates you're going to go into the classrooms. Every one of them have it that way with their building secretary. And at that time, if it's 9:15 and you're supposed to be in Mrs. Smith's room, unless there's an emergency, you're in Mrs. Smith's room. And I think they found that that's the only way that can really work. But we spent that really up through November working on this observation instrument to get that down. Once we got that, a lot of stress was relieved. The other thing that is huge is the SLOs. How many of you are having trouble with SLOs at your district level? Okay? That's the biggest concern that you're going to find on the part of the teachers. Tammy's going to spend a lot of time here today talking to you about the SLO process. And I'll tell you one thing, that process does become much easier your second year. And one of the things I would tell you from the perspective of the superintendent, going through this the first year, you're going to have to follow Indiana code, you're going to have to do all the things that are required. But don't think you're going to get it perfect. I think this is a process that's probably going to take 3 to 5 years for everybody to kind of perfect at their own level. We're doing things differently this year than we did it last year because we made mistakes last year and we cleaned some of those things up. We spent time on things last year that we needed to spend that time on other things. So don't think that this year you're going to get it all down, it's going to be perfect. Push your people to do things with fidelity, understanding that they can improve upon it the next year. And I think you'll see that with the SLO process for sure. And we'll go into some detail with that. We worked with TNTP, the New Teacher Project. They were the group out of, I guess, New York, among other places, that worked with us on this process. And we found that they gave us probably a lot what you're going to get today. Maybe some direction and training to begin the process. How we were able to be successful with it, though, was at those weekly meetings at our building levels with our staff and at the level weekly that we met with the administrators, and we worked through those problems ourselves. It's just like with the observations. The biggest concern you're going to have on the part of your teachers is, well, I've got Principal A, and he's really easy, and I've got Principal B, and they're very, very difficult, and I want Principal A because I'm going to get a fair observation from Principal A to Principal B. We had those same concerns. What we spent a lot of time with, and we came back in the summer and did a session with our administrators, even after we'd gone through a year of doing it, brought them back in and we did a morning session where we had a teacher teaching, and we had everybody scripted out, and then we sat down and we talked about likes and differences with that, so that we could try to build on that consistency. Then in the afternoon we came back and we did the same thing again. We're going to repeat that process even again. And we've done a lot of talking administratively about that, because that is a really big concern. But I think when you all have the same focus and you follow the process with fidelity and you follow the rubric, everything's pretty well clearly defined with that rubric. You just have to become very, very familiar with it. And let me tell you one thing we found out with the rubric that's very important. I told our administrators from the beginning, focus initially on the effective part of the rubric. And then you can deviate to the highly effective or the ineffective or needs improvement range. But if you focus, as you go in and you're looking at the teacher in that classroom, kind of focus on the things that you would find in an effective teacher. And that makes the process a little bit easier. If you're trying to look all the way across the rubric at all the different categories and all the different competencies and the indicators that are found in all of those, it is kind of overwhelming. You'll get a lot more proficient at using that, needless to say. And you'll be able to identify each one of those indicators probably in your sleep before the process is over. This is probably one of the keys for us. We talk a lot about, we want to see best practice in the classroom. And I guess, you know, everybody's, when you're born, you know what best practice is. We try to define that a little bit more so that our teachers, again, they know when we're coming in the classroom, what are we going to look for? This is just a list of things that we think are best practice in the classroom. It's not a complete list. And so that you don't kill yourself trying to get to all this, I'll get every bit of it to you. If you give me your email address, I'll get that from Gay, and we'll send the slides out to everybody. So you don't try to take notes, just write down questions that you might have. But we'll send all that out to everybody so you have everything that we present today. It'll just make life a little bit easier for you. And we have no secrets. I've probably stolen every bit of this from somebody else somewhere along the way. So have our principals and teachers and everyone else. So we're real good at that. But one of the things that I put this up here for is I think it's very, very important that you define for your teachers. And if you look at the rubric, you'll see a lot of it in the rubric. But define for your teachers what you want to see in the classroom. What's best practice going to look like? If you look at some 30-year, 40-year veteran teachers, they think best practice is what they're doing every single day in the classroom. Because they know what they're doing and they've done it for 30 years and they got to be good at it. Well, that could be the case, but if we're really focusing on student learning, that may not be the case. So you need to define for all of your teachers what your expectations are. Again, same expectation for your elementary PE teacher as your high school chemistry teacher. Different subjects, different maybe approaches, but same expectation, student learning. When that child comes into your classroom at the beginning of the year and they leave at the end of the year, they've learned. They've learned a lot of things, hopefully. And you can demonstrate what they've learned over the course of that time. In that beginning of the year, and this wasn't on the first day, but as we got through it and saw where this was going to go, sent this out to our staff, and it really helped us, I think, to develop the common focus on what do we really want to see at the end of the year in areas where we've improved because of this process. And those 6 things really stuck out to us. One, that we were going to have a mapped out quality curriculum at all grade and subject areas. We can check that off. We have that. We didn't necessarily have it at the beginning of the year. We had it in most, but not all. That we had authentic college prep literacy at all grade and subject levels. That's one of those things that's not going to happen in a year. That's one of the things that we're really working on. Because one of our main focuses is literacy across all grade levels and across all subject areas. One of my greatest concerns as superintendent is our kids do pretty well on the state tests, but our kids do lousy when it comes to the SATs, the ACTs, the AP exams, and I think a lot of that comes back to the literacy across all the subject areas, and that's a real focus for us over the next few years. Effective aligned lessons at all grade and subject levels. You can't have that if you don't have collaboration time built in at your building level. And that's, I would say, and probably Sarah will focus on maybe a little bit on that, that's one of the best things that's happened in our system, is that every one of those teachers at grade levels, when we're talking about at the elementary, at subject levels, when we're talking about at the junior high and high school, they have the ability to get together and plan together and make sure they're all focused on the same things every day. It doesn't reduce any individuality of the teacher. It doesn't reduce the fact that we all have to be robots out there teaching the exact same thing the exact same way. You got to be teaching the exact same thing, but the way you do it, you're going to be able to use your own style to do that. The problem with it is we had too many teachers teaching what they wanted to teach instead of what they should be teaching. And I think this really is one of the keys to this whole process, is getting everybody on the same page and aligning all those lessons at the various grade levels and subject areas. We also wanted to make sure that we focus on differentiated instruction, excuse me, and the key being reteaching when we did multiple checks for understanding and found out the kids weren't getting it. We're doing every 4.5 weeks in all of our subject areas, we're developing and having short cycle assessments, as we call them, for every one of those subject areas at every grade level, just to check for understanding. Kids, if they're not getting the core things that they need to be getting, then the teachers go back and they reteach. One of the really keys to Greensburg in helping us is we started 2 years ago with an algebra project that we copied off, was it Danville? Danville, where every one of our math teachers at the high school teach algebra, so that they all have a buy-in to this. And every 9 weeks, we give the kids an assessment, and unless you score at the 80% level on that assessment, you go back and you repeat that 9 weeks. We found that on our end-of-course assessment, we went from the first year that we took that for algebra, excuse me, I think about 40% of the kids, I think, passed the end-of-course assessment, to last year, 86% of the kids passed the end-of-course assessment. The last 2 years with our kids that were in the fourth quarter that didn't pass and came into summer school, 2 years ago we had 22 out of 22 pass the end-of-course assessment. Last year we had 19 out of 21. What this is very important, and what we've communicated across our district with, is if we weren't tracking the kids and we didn't have high expectations that they could all be successful, and we weren't going back and reteaching, because essentially that's what we're doing. If they didn't get the first 9 weeks are going to be retaught the materials in the first 9 weeks before they go to the second. Then we wouldn't be having the success that we're having. Even at our junior high level, we had 55 kids last year that took algebra to junior high level. 54 of them were pass plus, and the one kid who didn't get it at the junior high level, they missed it by 2 points, missed pass plus by 2 points. They all passed the I-STEP, the end of course assessment for algebra. They all passed that. So, you know, a lot of this comes back to the reteaching and the expectation level. Number 5 there is what I said before about really a focus on student engagement. If you really have your curriculum aligned with the standards, you don't have time to be showing a movie in class. You don't have time to give them 10 minutes at the end of the period to do homework. You don't really to goof off. It's not to do homework, it's to goof off. You just don't, your time is your most important thing you have in that classroom, and you got to use every single minute of it effectively. And I think this new focus on that really is starting to pay dividends. Number 6 there is our biggest concern. When Tammy and I have conversation, when our principals have conversation, we had our meeting last night, and we probably spent 10 minutes talking about this last night at the administrators meeting, is rigor. We aren't going to improve at that SAT level or ACT level or AP level if we don't increase rigor within our district. And you know, for a community like Greensburg, we've got almost 70% free and reduced lunch in our community, so we're not an affluent community. So when you talk about increasing rigor, the parents see that as, well, the kids who got A's are now going to get B's, and the kids who got B's are going to get C's, and so you got that, but well, my child's always gotten straight A's. Well, you know what? When you really increase the rigor, maybe some of those kids who got straight A's don't get straight A's anymore. And maybe some of those kids who pass don't pass anymore. And that's something we're going to have to deal with at the district level and at each building level. But that is a real key for our kids. And that's something we really have to build into every lesson, every single day, at every single level. Because I can't fathom how we can just let ourselves stay at the same level with SAT scores and ACT scores and our AP stuff when that's really going to be a measure of what's going on in our high school. Last year, our high school kids graduated with an average of 16 college credits per kid. We offer 23 dual credit courses at our high school. And our kids really take advantage of that. But if you have all these really positive things going on like that, but yet our graduation rate's about 93%, 95% last few years, you have all those positive things going on, but then your kids' SAT scores are averaging 950, something's not right there. And we really think it's this rigor issue that we have to address. You know what? The nice thing about it is a lot of this didn't come out until we were really looking at the data. And probably Tammy and I do more analyzing of data at my office in a week than I used to do in a year. It's continuous. And I think it's the same thing carries over to the building level, and I think it carries over into the classroom level. We said these are the 3 things that you really have to concentrate on over the course of the year. And I was thinking this summer, what is going to be our focus this year is different than last year. As I told our teachers and our administrators, we're going to focus on those 3 C's. Communicate, 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 collaborate, and then celebrate. And I think that's very, very important. You know, there's a lot of different ways to celebrate. Some of them cost money, some of them don't cost money. But, you know, just having donuts in the morning or a jeans day, one of the things our teachers would kill, I think, for jeans day. It's the biggest thing in the world if they can wear jeans to school for a day. We do some things like that, you know, the pirate days where everybody wears their pirate gear for the day. No swords or anything like that. T-shirts are okay. But this is a very important to us because we wanted to really have a focus this year. And everybody can remember the 3 C's. Communicate, and you can't say that enough. This process is going to increase that algebraically for you. It's just going to be amazing, the communication I think that you're going to see in your buildings, if you're building principals, at the district level, if you're a central office person that you didn't have before. And you can't have, if one of our core values was shared leadership, you can't have shared leadership if you don't have time to collaborate. Whether it's a teacher level or whether it's the principals with the teachers. And I really have always been a firm believer. I'm not that smart a guy, I know that. And if I'm in there a room with 10 people, I know collectively all 10 of those people and myself are a lot smarter than me. And some of the ideas I may have, they're going to have a lot better ideas. And I think one of the things as administrators, I've always been a pretty autocratic administrator. I've had to really change that. I've had to give in on some things that I probably wouldn't have given in on 5 or 10 years ago. But we've seen so many positive things come out of that. None of us have all the answers. But all of us together probably do have most of the answers. We just have to listen. So really concentrate on this communication and collaboration at your building level and at your district level. We'll go into this. These guys will go more into this, but we really, last year, we really concentrated mostly on the instruction domain. This year, we're really concentrating again on that, but also the planning and leadership. Both of those things are going to come out. Both of those will come out in your observations and your interaction with your teachers at the building level. And they're going to talk to you, I think, about some of the, Dave, we're going to talk about the instrument you set up to track all that. Yeah. Dave's going to give you a lot of the meat and potatoes that you came for today to hear, not just what we're going to hear from me, but I wanted to give you an introduction into this. Again, I think this is a very important slide because it's ways that you have that collaboration and communication taking place in your buildings. How many of you guys have some really good teachers in your buildings? How many of you utilize every one of those really good teachers in your buildings? Most of us don't. I found, I didn't have a problem paying $1,000 for someone to come in and talk to our staff about something. I probably had 5 people on that staff that could have done a better job than the person we paid $1,000 to come in. And we're not doing that anymore. One of the things that I started that we're going to do in our corporation is next month through April, we're going to meet bi-weekly, twice a month, with a group of 23 teachers who signed up for this. We're all teachers. Everything from a first-year teacher to a 30-year teacher in our corporation. We are going to, Tammy and I, from the central office point, we're going to have a leadership cadre in our corporation. And we're going to bring them in and we're going to discuss different aspects of leadership as they apply at an administrative level and as they apply just at a school level. We're really going to try to cultivate people within our district that want to be leaders. And the one thing I shared with our principals last night is when we finish this process, or as we go through this process, those 23 people are going to go back out in your buildings, and we're going to give them leadership assignments, duties, experiences, whatever you want to call it, at the building level, to where they can not only hear and discuss at the meeting level, but go out and really use it in a practical manner within the building. We think we'll get a lot from that process. And there's 23, we have 155 teachers, 23 volunteered for it. Actually, I had 37, but 14 of them just couldn't come up with the time that we could get together. And we did kind of a multiple, I gave multiple choices on before school, after school. It's all going to be from 3:30 to 4:30, 5 o'clock every other Mondays when we're going to be getting together. So, you know, again, another good lead by example. I'm there. Our administrators will be there as they see fit. But, you know, that whole group is going to meet and collaboratively do some things out in our school community. One of the things I had to do as a superintendent at the end of this process is, okay, what are some takeaways that you got from being a pilot? And these were 3 things that I said. You know, 1, it increased observation and attention to measures of student learning, enabled principals to engage teachers in authentic dialogue about instruction, and provide teachers with fair assessments of the current effectiveness. Now, Dave's going to talk to you in more detail about that, but I'll tell you one of the things as superintendent, when I go out in the buildings, I have lunch at one of our schools every day, and I go down to the teacher's lounge, and before last year, usually the conversation was maybe about a football game or basketball game, or it's about Billy Bob and what Billy Bob was doing to terrorize the school. You guys ever heard those conversations? It is amazing what the conversations now are in the teacher's lounge, and especially when you go out to the collaboration time at the building level that the teachers are having about instruction and about curriculum. That's the biggest takeaway that I see from last year, that our conversations are completely different than what they were before. And I think that's a good gauge probably for you at the end of the year on how this process developed over the course of the year for you. Probably it'll be a lot different in your school district than ours. But I think if some of those conversations don't change, then you probably need to look at I think, probably the communication level in your district, because they will change. The second thing is the pilot provided common language of instruction and clear expectations for instructional practice for all staff members. Just like I told you before, the expectation level for the elementary music teacher is the same as the expectation for the high school chemistry teacher. The language that we use when we go in and make observations in those classes are the same. The dialogue that the principals have with those teachers are essentially going to be the same. And, you know, the vocabulary is very important. Everybody's got to speak the same language. I don't speak Russian, and if you start speaking Russian to me, I'm not going to understand anything you're saying. And sometimes we were speaking Russian. So first we had to define what some of this vocabulary really meant. And I think that really goes back again to talking about best practice and talking about it at your level, at your building levels. What does that really look like? What am I really going to want to see when I walk in your classroom? The third thing down there is very important, and that is teachers may get a different rating than in the past, but the intent of accurate evaluations is to help them assess and improve their instruction. On day one, I made a promise to all of our staff, teachers and principals. This year, for sure, this process isn't an I got you. You know, after I went through this process last year, I made that same promise again this year. I don't think this process ever has to be an I got you. This process is to improve instruction. When we got through the process last year, we had, out of 155 teachers, we really identified about probably 15 that we had concerns with out of the 155. Because we had about 8 teachers that retired last year. We actually had 10 who chose to retire at the end of last year. 8 of them were because of the new process. Without a doubt, they would not have retired. They did not want to go through this new process. Some of those 8 probably would have been, at best, needs improvement. We didn't really focus on, if you retired, we didn't focus on your evaluation last year. One, I have a hard time with someone who's put in 35 years, and the last thing that they remember when they leave our district is, I'm labeled as an ineffective teacher. Because if that's the case, I'm definitely an ineffective superintendent, and you're an ineffective principal, because they shouldn't have been here 35 years. So the last thing is not going to be here how ineffective you are. So we just kind of wrote that off. We're not writing it off anymore. And we have some of those teachers who've been around a long time right now are on an improvement plan for this year. But our whole thing is not to get you. Our whole thing is about helping you. And the only way we're going to help you is through this collaboration at the building level. We're in it together. We're a team. And if I'm a third grade teacher and I'm struggling in language arts, and we've got 7 or 8 other third grade teachers who are teaching exactly the same thing you're teaching, and they're having success, you need to be able to go and watch them teach and see what they're doing that you're not doing. You need to be able to sit down with them at a table and say, I just can't get this across. What can I do to make sure my kids are getting it? That's what this has all got to lead to where the whole evaluation process isn't about, I gotcha. It's about improving instruction. No matter all the technology we have, all of the things that we have in our buildings, I still firmly believe the most important thing that's going to determine if a kid's going to be successful or not is that classroom teacher. And we have a duty as administrators to make sure we provide every resource we can to that classroom teacher and everything that we can to make them be successful. Because if they're successful, kids are going to learn. And that's what it's all about. I put this out on, I think, pretty much day one, didn't I? Expectations. This year, and we focused on it all last year. I want the teachers to fully understand what do administrators expect when they come in your classroom. I could have given a list of 85 things there, but I tried to break it down into 4 things that they could really understand. And those 4 things are quality instruction as evidenced by data. At the end of the year or at the end of your short cycle assessment, does your data show that you are effective in your kids' learning? Student engagement, again, we don't have 10 minutes at the end of the period to goof off. We're not showing a movie that's totally irrelevant to what we're focusing on for that week or that day. Reteaching after we have frequent testing for understanding, checking for understanding. You know, I think the greatest thing that came out of this process is there's an old scroungy body laying in front of the classroom called the sage. Because the sage is dead. Sage on the stage is dead. It isn't possible anymore for you just to come up here and say, oh, I taught it, they didn't get it, it's their fault. Now, I think as administrators, we can look at the teacher and say, no, it's your fault. What you're doing isn't working and you've made nothing to change what you're doing. The sage on the stage is dead, and I applaud that greatly. Because there's probably not any of us sitting in this room or standing here in the room, as some of us are, that didn't have one of those sages on the stage as we went through education. And there's still a few live ones out there. And what my goal as superintendent in our corporation is, I want all the sages gone. I want, when kids aren't getting it, I want us to have a mechanism in place to go back and reteach and make sure they do get it. And then the last thing there is that we have to increase rigor in our classrooms. That's not going to happen overnight. You know, that's another one of those things that's ongoing. And as I told you before, I think this whole process, and as I shared with TNTP over and over again, this isn't a one-year process. You're not going to get it all right in 1 year. Probably 3 years would be much better to put the process in place. But you know what? If we said 3 years, we'd be doing the same thing at the end of 3 years, and a lot of corporations that we're doing the first year right now. It would be put off, and we wouldn't be as far along as we could be in the process. You will all make it at the end of this year. You will all be successful. You'll see a lot of positives come out of this. I told our principals one thing, and Dave will share with you. I told them, my only expectation for you this year, because I had a couple that were very negative about this. I set all of them down. I said, you will either be very positive about this process and work very hard to make this be successful, or I will fire you. And I think you've got to be positive about it. You've got to have the leadership at the building level that is making sure that things are being done with fidelity. And I don't care about some mistakes. You know, we made a lot of mistakes. I did at the central office level, they did probably at the building levels, and teachers do at the classroom levels. But we all have to be working diligently on making sure that we improve instruction in that classroom. And if you've got a principal out there who doesn't believe in the process, it ain't going to happen at the building level. They got to be the cheerleader, they got to be the leader, they got to know the process. And it's a lot of work. And Dave's going to share some of that with you. The positive approach, demonstrating that they're up to the challenge, and most importantly, leading. And leading now is not leading the kids out to the bus. Leading is all about the educational process that's going on in your building, not the management process. You really will become the educational leader in your building. I've been a superintendent for 13 years. I had a general knowledge of curriculum like probably most administrators have. My knowledge of curriculum has increased tenfold in this last year because it's had to. I would say building principals, their knowledge of curriculum has probably in most cases increased tenfold. Thank God we had Tammy to teach us all that. Hers probably hasn't, but she's done a great job. Not only with her general knowledge coming in, but she's the huge resource that we need. The person, oh, I can say, Tammy, we need some more information on this, get it for us. And she gets it. You will be a better administrator because of this process. That's kind of my overview of the RISE program, but I think one of the things that you have to be as a building administrator or the superintendent, if you want it to be successful, and guys, you're gonna invest so much time and energy into this process, and because you've evidently adopted it, or you wouldn't be sitting here today. Why not make it work for you? And that's what I sat down with our administrator and said, guys, we're doing this. We're gonna spend so much time and energy on it. Let's make sure it's for the right reasons. Let's make sure that it really does improve instruction in our buildings. And kids are going to benefit from it. And you know what? As I told you before, we're pushing 70% free and reduced. We've got a whole new culture in our community. When I went through Greensburg Schools, and I'm a graduate of our high school, so I've been there my whole life. Can't get rid of me. When I went there, our community is a lot different than it is today. We truly have become one of those communities. The only way our kids are going to get out of the cycle that's been established over the last decade is that we provide the best education they can so they can go out there and be competitive in today's world, whether they're going on to college or whether they're going on into the workforce. All of our $30 an hour factory jobs that we had 15 years ago, the ones that we still have left, they're replaced with $10 temp jobs. Even the jobs we have in our community aren't jobs that people can raise a family on. We have a very transient population, in and out, and we have to be that thing that's going to be able to break that cycle. And I believe we can. You know, we're not any different than any other corporation sitting out here. You know, we're not all, you know, we're not Warren Central, or we're not IPS, or we're not Carmel. We're really most Indiana communities, Greensburg is. And we don't have it perfect. We don't have this process down perfect. But I think we have come a long way in a year. And you can too. But you got to be committed to it. With that, I think we're going to take a break here. Listen to me for an hour. We're going to come back. Tammy's going to talk to you about the SLO process and some of the things that go into that. And then Dave's going to talk to you from the principal's perspective. And Sarah's going to talk to you from the teacher perspective. Do you have any quick questions? Any questions about anything that I've talked about? Guys, I know I've kind of preached a little bit this morning. But you as administrators, you've got to preach this. If you really want it to be successful, you've got to sell it to everybody. You know, I had to sell it to our community, to our administrators, to our teachers. You got to sell it out there. Because what we were doing, all you got to do is look at what we were doing in the past. You know what? It wasn't working. The algebra is a perfect example. If we continue doing algebra the same way we had always done it, guess how many of our kids would have passed the ECA? On a good year, maybe 50%. But not pushing 90. We changed the way we were doing things, and I think that's what this whole process is about. Changing the way that we look at what's going on in our buildings and focusing on instruction. That's the whole key. Focus on instruction. With that, I'll shut up. You can take a break.